New alarm bells ringing tonight on the coronavirus outbreak in this country.
Doctors say the virus is spread through droplets when someone coughs or sneezes.
And I think the business community, it's in their interest that people actually stay home and stop the spread.
For a business that can allow more employees to telecommute, we want you to do that.
Hi, friends. I'm Andy Paul, host of the Sales Enablement Podcast, and I want to encourage you to listen to my brand new special 6-part podcast miniseries titled Selling with Purpose. The team behind Sales Enablement Podcast and I put together this incredible series of inspiring conversations exploring what it means to sell with a mission greater than just hitting your numbers in this era of COVID-19 and beyond. So tune in to hear from world-class enterprise sales leaders and learn how their 6 companies will close $50 billion selling remotely. See how they've supported essential workers with the products and services they need to stay safe and thrive during this time of crisis. Subscribe to Selling with a Purpose now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Guided selling from RingDNA makes your entire sales team more effective by revealing exactly what reps should do and when to do it. Guided selling works by transforming sales data into a curated list of prioritized sales actions. So when reps start their day, they'll never again wonder which prospects and accounts or hot inbound leads to reach out to next. Guided selling even shifts reps' priority in response to real-time buying signals. Finally, even new reps can sell like seasoned ones. Let RingDNA be your guide to success. Learn more at ringdna.com/guided selling. That's ringdna.com/guided selling. It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 752 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record. As always, I have another excellent episode lined up for you today. Joining me this week as my guest is Lisa Magnuson. Lisa is the author of a very useful book titled The Top Sales Leader Playbook, How to Win 5X Deals Repeatedly. So today we're going to be talking about selling big deals. In particular, about updating your sales playbooks to enable you to identify, qualify, and close significantly bigger deals on a consistent basis. And among the topics Lisa and I are going to dive into today is why you have to do things differently when you're targeting these big deals, these 5X sales deals. Your old sales playbook just won't cut it anymore. We'll talk about why you need to learn to execute your processes more effectively to win big deals. And when you do, I have a trickle-down effect on all the sales opportunities you're working on because it makes your whole sales team better. And Lisa will also share the reasons why, if you plan to pursue 5X deals, you first must nurture a culture of accountability within your organization. Because winning big deals is more about having the right sales structure than just having superstar sellers. So we'll be getting into all that and much, much more. But before we get to Lisa, I'd like to quickly talk to you about RingDNA. RingDNA is the leading revenue acceleration platform that uses AI to help businesses scale revenue growth. They offer a complete solution for sales engagement. That means you can call, text, email, automate sales cadences, effectively coach your sellers, and more, all from one tool. Only with a complete integrated platform can you supercharge rep productivity and optimize peak sales performance. You can learn all about this at RingDNA, about RingDNA, at ringdna.com/Andy. That is ringdna.com/Andy. And while you're there, download RingDNA's free research report titled The 2020 Sales Prospecting Performance Report. It's full of actionable insights to help you build your sales pipeline, including data on the best time of day to call your prospects, optimal first call conversation lengths, and much, much more. So you can get your copy, again, today at ringdna.com/Andy. That's ringdna.com/Andy. Okay, let's jump into it. Lisa, welcome to Accelerate.
Thank you.
Well, it's nice to have you. You're joining us from where today?
I'm joining you from the beautiful Pacific Northwest.
Specifically Portland,
Portland,
right?
Oregon. Yes.
Portland, Oregon. Great food truck town.
So true.
Remember the last time I was there a couple of years ago, there was a square somewhere, it seemed like, that was just ringed with food trucks. It was,
Yeah. And
hard decision. about what the...
And we have multiple pods of food trucks now. Probably started out kind of with one pod, but have become so popular that they just have grown exponentially.
Yeah. I think the sort of food truck thing sort of really started there, I think, to some degree. So, yeah, beautiful place to be from. So we're here to talk about big deals today.
Yes.
Big deals.
Love to talk about big deals.
Big deals. And specifically your book, The Top Sales Leader Playbook, How to Win 5X Deals Repeatedly. So what was the impetus to write this book?
Well, I have been really spent my whole career interested and involved with big deals, and specifically as a consultant for the last 15 years with my company Top Line Sales. My niche is really big deals. But specifically to write the book, I went out and I interviewed 41 sales VPs, and I asked them, these were live interviews, and I asked them, about their goals and their priorities and about how they approach big deals and about what they would want to see in a playbook. And it changed the book that I wrote. They had a lot to say, and some things were surprising. There were some things that I didn't expect. And so I really wrote the book that they wanted me to write.
Okay. But I mean, clearly the motivation behind it was you're looking around thinking, must be a better way, right?
Well, the motivation really was that a lot of companies want to have a big deal engine, and they have pieces of it, but rarely do companies have all the components needed to just really repeatedly win those big deals, those 5X deals. And so my whole impetus was to give sales leaders the plays that they need to have all the cylinders going at the same time, so that the result is not just one or two big banner accounts, which are great, but really a sales organization that can repeatedly win those big deals. And so that was my impetus, and that's when I went and sought the opinions of the people for whom I wrote the book.
Okay, so tell people what a 5X deal is. And you're talking about that as order value. I assume it's 5 times your normal value, but is it order value or sort of your lifetime value of the account?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, I get asked that question a lot. And it's really just for people to understand that we're talking about bigger deals. So 5 times your average deal size is how I define it in the book. And the why that's important is because when you have a big deal, things happen differently. They're not, your normal sales process, you will use it, but it is not sufficient. You have to do extra stuff. You have to do extra strategy work. Big deals are messy. You have to move forward, and then you sometimes move back, and then you move forward again. So I was really trying to come across with the 5X is that these are big. If your average deal size is $100,000, and a 5X deal for you might be $500,000. But more importantly than the actual value is that you really need to do things differently when you're talking about those big accounts. Like my friend and colleague Barbara Weaver Smith calls them whales.
Whales, right? Barbara's been on the show a couple times.
Well, awesome.
So let's dig into that a little bit, because is your thought and your experience such that you say, okay, well, gosh, they got a lot of companies out there that are doing $100,000 deals, and the $500,000 deal opportunity exists with those same customers they're selling to. They're just not taking advantage of it. I mean, is that sort of the thrust for the book, or is it more, you need to sort of reorient yourself, pick out a new ICP, maybe you're not addressing right now, people have higher potential, or is it both?
It's really both, because, it depends on your focus as a company. A lot of companies focus, on new logos, new opportunities. And if you really have sort of a culture that talks about, supports, has a methodology around big deals, then the salespeople know how to spot them. To spot those kinds of opportunities, and then that's when they start doing things differently. But also, you could have some really big customers that have the capability to be 5X what they are for your company today. And so maybe those are handled by an account manager, maybe they're handled by the same salesperson. handling both new logo and existing customers. So it's really both, but it really starts when you sort of identify that opportunity. We think we have a big opportunity here. What do we do?
So identify the opportunity, or in some cases, and you address this in the book, is really sort of identify the imperative to start talking and out looking for bigger deals. I mean, I think that this is, because I think a lot of companies are getting this mindset, and I've certainly worked with some as an employee and as a consultant, just weren't mindful of the fact that these big opportunities exist, maybe within the people the companies are already talking to, and they just have to have the confidence, if you will, to some degree, is to say, yeah, actually there's an opportunity here, and we're going to take a risk and invest in it, going after it, but it can be transformational if we get it.
Well, I'm reminded of a story that happened early in my consulting career, and I was working with a client, and one of their account executives, Christy, goes on an appointment with a new prospect, big company, and believes that she's identified a huge opportunity. So she comes rushing back to the office, bursts into the VP of sales office and says, I think I've got, a really big opportunity. And the VP of sales says, okay. And so he calls me and says, Lisa, can you just come in and help us just evaluate? We need to kind of make a go, no-go decision. And so I remember we had this meeting on a Friday. There was 8-9 people, pulled together. We were evaluating the opportunity. And that meeting ended up going into Saturday because it was complex. There was some real possible showstoppers. But at the end of the Saturday meeting, it's like, you know what? Let's go for this. We think we have a shot. And the team did go for it. I ended up staying with them for 18 months, all the way through the conclusion. It was when they finally closed it, it was well over a year. It was worth $20 million to their company.
Wow.
And it was the biggest deal of its type for the company that year. And this wasn't a small company. And they still have that customer today. They've expanded that customer. That deal, the people that were on that account team, the VP of sales has gone on to huge promotions. Christy, where it all started, the account manager, she has survived layoffs. She's just thrived in her career. And because she stayed with it all the way through, she identified it and stayed with it. And, so there's a situation where, that was transformative for even that big company. It was transformative for the people on the account team. And it started with just, Christy going, wow, I think this could be big. Even though there were some red flags.
Sure. Well, I think there always are with big opportunities.
Yeah.
But I think for
never easy.
No, I mean, I think for companies that haven't done big deals before, and certainly for startups and smaller companies, there's so many things you learn from doing a big deal, which aren't necessarily exclusively on the sales side. I mean, one is you learn how to execute on delivering a big deal. That is hugely transformative for a company, right? If you understand, suddenly, okay, we've got this customer, we've never tackled one this size. And you got to be careful; it doesn't kill you, right? Sometimes with small companies, you have to be very careful that how you choose. And then to your point that you made earlier is then you develop these ongoing relationships with these potentially large customers that, in my experience, if they can give you a large deal once, they'll give you a large deal multiple times.
They can be years and years and years as customers, and usually are, if you can do a good job of supporting them, like you said. And it's interesting because in my playbook, as you know, it includes 16 plays. Every play has a sideline coach. And I kind of searched the world over for the experts that I thought would lend some good expertise to whatever particular play. And I'm thinking, as you were talking about having to do things differently, I'm thinking of Brian Burns, who really weighed in on talking about how companies have to change when it comes to big deals. And some of the examples he gave were about the compensation structure. It's in a typical company, the compensation goes from January through December, and there's set targets. But when it comes to big deals, sometimes you have to expand those timeframes. And same with implementation. Companies might have guidelines around maybe a pilot project, what they're willing to do with a pilot. But for a big deal, if your standard is a 30-day pilot, you may have to do a 120-day pilot. You really have to change as a company to both land and support these new big customers. And if you can get that right, it just opens the door to all the ones that are going to come behind that. And that's when you have that big deal engine where you really have this culture and you have this as a company, you know how to support those big deals and those big deal customers.
Yeah, well, I think that one of the interesting phenomenon around big deals for sales leaders listening and even sellers is that, and this has been my experience over multiple startups, is that where we sold lots of big deals, is that when you get that big deal, I'll give you an example. And this has happened, I said multiple times. One company, startup, VP of sales, we were at about a $7 million annual revenue rate. We got this big deal that came in, it was $10 million delivered in 1 year. So revenues, our basic business,
way more than 5x.
Well, our basic business was hopping along at $7 million a year. And suddenly this next year it did 17. Well, obviously we weren't able to go back to the board and say, well, next year we'll be back at so on and so forth. No, they expect the next year is going to be in the mid-20s.
Right.
So what happened, though, interestingly, is, and again, I can't stress enough for the companies that are thinking about this, is that we were scared to death that 10 million was going to go away and, what's going to happen? What we found is that we got better at all of our business, not just the big business. So our base business actually expanded and filled that $10 million gap. And then we got new, bigger deals to take us to the mid-20s where we wanted to be. And
nice.
These big deals really become step functions for growth in a company.
Yes.
Because as you expand your capabilities to execute on bigger deals, you get better at executing everything that you're doing.
Well, your stories change. Your stories. The salespeople can tell the story. They can tell the story about the big customer that you got, and especially if it's a banner name. And then you can tell the story of how you support that customer.
It helps for sure.
Yeah, and that's how what you're talking about, that step up capability.
Well, that was part of it, but part of it was we just executed better, right? I mean, our sales processes on the smaller, more routine business became more effective and more productive, and we saw, based on what it took to capture a big deal, that we're making the small deals too complicated, and we found a way to accelerate those. And I said we've repeated this pattern in multiple companies. It's just rather than being afraid of big deals, what you want to be. Make sure you have your ducks in a row and read your book. But you really need to embrace the right opportunity because it will drive all of your business. And it doesn't mean your business is suddenly become lumpy with big deals here and there. It's like, no, it's the rising tide that literally lifts all boats.
Yes. Jill Conrath, who wrote my foreword, I think she used that exact analogy at the end of her foreword. So true. And it's awesome that you've had that experience and been part of that experience with the companies that you've worked with, because it doesn't always go that way. If one of the things as part of my advances, which is really the account strategy work that needs to be done by the account team, one of the pieces is it comes up twice in the 11 advances, which is kind of a risk analysis. Can we support this sales process? Can we support this customer? What are the yellow flags? What are the red flags? Kind of like my story about Christy, who identified the big opportunity. I mean, some of the reasons why it was so hard for them to make a go decision is because they had to partner with a whole other company to deliver the services. The customer described their buying process. They were going to go through an RFI and an RFP. So just from the get-go, it was going to be over a year. Just that was going to happen. And was the team really committed to stay together and put that kind of time in for something that was going to be so hard? And so, identifying those things early really helps, because then you can kind of go, okay, we can do this. Yeah, we don't normally form partnerships to deliver our services, but we can. I think we can, and
sometimes you're forced to. So, I mean, so again, I spent a number of years selling very complex communication systems, multiple millions of dollars as a startup competing against big companies. And there were times we ran into customers who said, look, the value of your proposal is about 2 to 3x your revenues. So you need to bring a partner in who we're going to sign a contract with, and they'll take the risk of dealing with you. And yeah, you have to be open and flexible, to your point, to do that.
Yeah. You must have loved the play about competitive analysis and blocking. And Christopher Ryan's is a sideline coach on that play, and he kind of delineates the points of competition. And one of his points are, if you're a small company, you sell flexibility. It's like, go with us because we're small. If you're a big company, you sell stability. And you'd never want to work with a small company. So,
well, yeah. To your point, precisely, I write about that in my second book or I guess my first book is, a client that was small company and they're about $5-6 million in revenue, and they had an opportunity to bid on a $10 million deal to a company they've been dying to get in the door from. And their competition was a big company, just as you talked about it. And my advice to him was, well, what you do is break this up into 10 $1 million deals and say the first one is a proof of concept because, hey, Mr. Prospect, there's risk in this because we've got to integrate with a bunch of existing systems, And as soon as they said it, the buyer went for it because the buyer, the chief point of contact of the buyer, decision maker is like, yeah, this is going to reduce my risk profile inside the company. But as soon as he agreed to that and he told the big company bidding against my client, they lost interest because they're a big company and they needed big deals to keep on going. They didn't want that deal anymore. They didn't want $1 million deal. They wanted a $10 million deal. And
so you helped your client block that. I love that story. You didn't just reduce that competitor. You blocked them.
Oh yeah. They were gone. And they were gone. So it's a great opportunity for small companies. And this is back to a point we were talking about earlier. It's just, if you're getting into big deals, you got to be flexible. You got to be creative. You got to be thinking about, what is the true value that we're bringing to this opportunity, and maybe express it in a way that's a little bit different.
No matter where your sales team is working from, RingDNA can enable them to be more productive and effective. RingDNA offers a complete platform for remote sales teams that gives reps the tools they need to connect with more prospects and create more opportunities and drive more revenue no matter where they're working from. And managers can get real-time insight they need to coach reps to success. Win more deals from anywhere on the planet with RingDNA. Learn more about how RingDNA helps remote teams at ringdna.com/remote work. That's ringdna.com/remote work.
New alarm bells ringing tonight on the coronavirus outbreak in this country.
Doctors say the virus is spread through droplets when someone coughs or sneezes.
And I think the business community, it's in their interest that people actually stay home and stop the spread.
For a business that can allow more employees to telecommute, we want you to do that.
Hi, friends. I'm Andy Paul, host of the Sales Enablement Podcast. And I want to encourage you to listen to my brand new special 6-part podcast miniseries titled Selling with Purpose. The team behind Sales Enablement Podcast and I put together this incredible series of inspiring conversations exploring what it means to sell with a mission greater than just hitting your numbers in this era of COVID-19 and beyond. So tune in to hear from world-class enterprise sales leaders and learn how their 6 companies will close $50 billion selling remotely. See how they've supported essential workers with the products and services they need to stay safe and thrive during this time of crisis. Subscribe to Selling with a Purpose now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Well, and the other thing with how you helped your client back then is that you made it simple. And boy, every single year, the need to make things simple for the client and reduce the risk just gets more and more and more important. I mean, with 2020 being a whole nother level of, selling teams and account teams understanding that they have to only provide the information that the buying team or the buyer wants. They have to make that information completely digestible. They have to make it simple at every single turn while adding value. I mean, it's just, and so, that you did that back then. And that was the reason why you got the yes. And then you just fully blocked that big company. That was genius.
Yeah.
Love that.
Oh, thank you.
That's a great story.
Thank you. I've got others. Don't get me started. It's your show.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
But I really like also this, jumping around just a little bit, but you had
Sure.
brought the word up before, team. And I think that, again, this is something that plays in various different ways. And yeah, I read Brian Burns' comment about compensation. I'm not sure I entirely agreed, quite frankly, but
Oh,
and
that's good. I love that debate.
yeah, well, yeah, I think there's more real world that applies to it because in my experience, increasingly when you talk about team and you really do have a team working on something, then
Yes.
you're talking about a whole different take on compensation.
You are. You are.
Because it's if you bring together a team that's got cross-functional teams involved, you got marketing, you got engineering, and so on, and everybody spends a year and a half on it. At the end of the year, the salesperson is the only one that walks away with the big dollars. That's a problem because it's not just a compensation issue; it's a cultural issue. You've cultivated this team, so in some cases you have to level load the rewards in a way that benefit everybody.
And a couple of my other sideline coach experts sort of, provide a counterbalance to some of Brian's comments, like John Golden and Zena, and talk about the team and how important it is to win as a team, and winning means compensation and recognition. And so it's not, you don't get to the end of the 9 months, the 12 months, the 18 months, whatever it is, in your world, and the salesperson's the only one standing on that stage or the only one being compensated. That's not a big deal culture. It's not you're not creating that big deal engine.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely. I agree. Totally.
Yeah. I mean, I can rightfully claim that I've closed hundreds of millions of dollars in big deals, but it was all part of a team. And I mean, I couldn't have done any of it without, as a history major, sort of a technically competent layperson, but selling really complex technical stuff they would have been laughed out of some of these customers' offices if I didn't have the right resources deployed and people coming with me on calls and helping me back in the office, all that stuff.
Well, and sometimes we talked about how it's more important than ever to make things simple for the customer and for the buying team, all those relationships you need. I think the numbers, somewhere between 8 and 11 now, and that absolutely holds true in my experience doing war room work with my clients all the time.
Well, to that point, my experience is that number really isn't dramatically different from what I experienced 10, 20, 30 years ago selling big deals. But anyway, go ahead. Yeah,
absolutely. And that number's growing, but the recognition that you need to keep things simple for them and also reduce the risk. So having a team really does that. You've got subject matter experts on your team, which can simplify things for the customer, but also reduces the risk if the customer sees depth and experience as part of the account team. So
yeah, well, I think that's a great point. And this is something I've been talking to a number of people about recently is it reduces the perception of risk. The risk still exists. I think
that's true. Good point.
and I think that's really, but it's a critical point to make from a sales perspective. Is we talk about buy from people we know, like, and trust. I mean, granted, that's sort of taken as an article of faith, but the fact is we never really get to know our buyers well enough that they really trust us. They think we're trustworthy. That's what we're trying to achieve we're likable, but they don't really know us well enough to like us, and we're not friends. I think it was Aristotle talked about, it's a friendship of utility is what we have with people, and which is what you want, right?
Yes.
So I think but it's almost more important to make sure people really understand what we're trying to do is we're just trying to give not deceive people, but we're trying to create the perception that the risk is low. And that's as long as you understand what your real motivation is, because you're not really lowering the risk. And sometimes you have to accept things when you're doing big deals because the customer is saying, I'll accept a certain level of risk, but beyond that, no. And to one point, I'll get a story of one startup I was with. We closed this huge deal with this company in Asia, and they said, we were competing against all these big tech giants, and we'll give you the deal, but we're going to put somebody in your office for the next year. this could be our on-site program manager for you.
Interesting. Versus the opposite that happens frequently.
Yeah, and because we were doing a lot of development as part of the package, the deliverable.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of companies I've talked to just said, there's no way we would have done that. But we did, and we got the deal, and it was instrumental in getting other future deals and so on. So this idea about being creative, but also what we did is deliberately made the person part of the team.
But that did reduce the risk for that customer. It did, because it's just as if your team had put somebody on site at the customer location, which is much more common than the customer putting someone on site at your location. But those things do reduce risk, not just the perception of risk, but they actually reduce the risk. And I think having a depth of resources as part of the team. So, the account team might include somebody from professional services, customer success. And if that person's representing an organization that does have depth and they can explain that to the customer's like, you know what, we don't have all those resources. So you're giving us a team of, 10, 20, 100 resources. That reduces our risk of failing on this project.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a balance there where there's some perceived risks. I was just involved with a client last week. I've been working with them for 5 months on an RFP for a new opportunity for them. It's not an existing customer for them. And, the whole RFP was all about the win themes, making sure we were only hitting on those things. So we went through extraordinary measures to write our responses in that way, to figure out our win themes, write our responses that way. It worked. We became
explain for people that are listening what your win theme is. You define it.
Yeah. Win themes are really the intersection of your prospects' priorities and your strengths as an organization. And so what they really do is they really zero in on those areas of interest to the prospect. They get rid of all the noise. And the noise being that if you don't have win themes, the tendency of salespeople, professional salespeople, is just to talk about all your strengths. Our company does this. We have this. We've gotten this awards. But win themes gets rid of all that noise. And so you only are talking about those strengths that match with their priorities, those points of alignment. And those are win themes. And so we did that. As a matter of fact, my role on the team with my client was to help them craft them, and then they wrote out the responses. They've got a professional, group that responds to RFPs. They wrote them out, and then I graded every single response. So I said, you didn't hit on the win themes. You didn't give an example. You didn't back up your win theme with any evidence. And they rewrote that response. And so we went through. They became a finalist. Last week, was a finalist presentation. So we did 4 dry runs. But in preparing for the dry runs, I'm going to come back to this whole thing of risk. In preparing for the dry runs, we really said it's like our biggest competitor is not the incumbent who was strong, but our biggest competitor is that pain of change, that perceived risk.
Sure.
And even though
and I think that's always the case.
Those two things are related, because the pain of change would also mean the incumbent would stay. And they're not always the same like that, but in this case they were. But by really identifying that pain of change and that risk being the number one competitor, it changed how they were going to present. They had limited time, so they had to make real hard choices about how they were going to spend that time they had in the finals presentation. So I don't know if there's a happy ending in the story. We don't know if we won the deal yet. I'd like to say, but it's way more than a 5X.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we're going to take a short break here. And joining me is William Tyree. William is the Chief Marketing Officer of Ring DNA. And we're going to talk about the Sales Madness Bracket Challenge. William, welcome to the show.
Thank you. How you doing, Andy?
I'm doing very well. Very well. How about you?
I am very well. Just, trying to stay safe out there.
That's right. Trying to stay safe. Self-quarantined, so to speak. So a phrase that will live down for the rest of our lives. So what is the Sales Madness Bracket Challenge?
In short, it is the Hunger Games of sales thought leadership. So, for anyone who has ever been influenced by a classic sales book, it's a chance to show that book some love and that author some love by being the judge and jury. It's essentially like a March Madness style tournament with 64 of the greatest sales books of all time.
And so you've taken 64 books and you've lined them up in a bracket. So there's head-to-head matchups. And, this is not serious competition. As I told somebody, it's sort of on the order of, hey, everybody gets a trophy type competition. But it's very friendly. It's we're interested in finding out what people think is the most influential sales book that they've read. Totally right.
There are trophies, though. If I could just
there
say.
Are trophies. Well, as I said, everybody gets a trophy.
Yeah. Actually, it's, similar to other, bracket challenges. If, you predict the winning challenge or, come close, there's a bunch of prizes, actually, ranging from a year of Audible, year free of Audible subscription to AirPods Pro to an instant sales library of, the final 4 or the final 8. And a lot of other fabulous prizes. So,
yeah, well, I'm anxious to see what the results are of the first round, which is going to be coming up the first weekend of March Madness, the basketball tournament. So, as I understand, just the process is the elimination is going to mirror the elimination that takes place in the basketball tournament.
Almost 100%, absolutely. And by the way, you don't even have to show up and, worry about, other people with coronavirus, right?
You can do this all from the safety of your home.
All online. And what's kind of fun is actually we're starting to see a lot of people weigh in on social media, on LinkedIn and Twitter to a lesser extent. And it's fun seeing, people talk about what their favorites are. So, yeah, so absolutely. So people can create a bracket, this week and next week. And then, there's a lot of opportunities to vote on individual matchups or all the matchups going forward.
So, yeah, how's that work?
Okay. So people would go to ringdna.com/sales madness. And again, ringdna.com/sales madness. And essentially, there's just a big old button there that says create a bracket. And, it just like, any NCAA tournament bracket, or anything like that you've ever done. Super easy. You just pick your winners all the way through. Takes about 5 minutes. And then that's it. You're in.
And what if somebody doesn't get to it till like the round of 16? Can they still submit a bracket or what do they do at that point?
They can not only still vote for, the hot matchups, either one matchup or all the matchups at the round of 16 or any round, but you can also still qualify for prizes. So,
wow.
Guarantee we'll still have winners winning cool stuff, near the end.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I've submitted mine. William, have you submitted yours?
I have submitted mine.
But are you eligible to win? Because, you're an employee of the company. Do we have to have that disclaimer?
I am so not eligible to win. Yeah, unfortunately, but that's okay. I think what I get out of this, though, is I love being able to, talk about books, see books that I should be, reading. And I think we're in for some surprises.
Well, I think what we'd like to see, too, is if you're a listener to the show and somebody else that, you'd like to sort of test yourself against them is give them a one-on-one challenge and say, hey, submit your bracket and let's see who does better. We'd love to hear you amplify that out on social media. So, all right, William, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you so much, Andy. See you soon.
And we'll catch up with you after the first round, I think.
100%.
So back to the theme we were talking about before is the importance of team. And I think the strength of your book is just the process it lays out.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it's for people listening, it's not really in my mind, it's not really sort of this nuts and bolts. This is what you do when you're sitting in front of the customer type book. This is how you create a culture of accountability within an organization, which is so important to pursue these types of large opportunities. And because with the structure you lay out with the account quarterback and the team meetings and so on, is that what you're doing is well, you do a couple things. One is you're really cutting down the BS that happens, right? So people buy drink their own Kool-Aid, so to speak, and
Yes.
and that's very, very common in big deals, and because there's not enough people challenging the assumptions that are made or the information that's gathered. So the process, I think, is quite important for that. And I think you also lay out with your plays and the advances and so on is people understand that getting big deals is really not about superstars.
Right.
And I think that's really important for people to understand, because I think, well, we got to go out and get these superstars to get these big deals. And, I started selling big deals. I had never done it. And I'm fortunate to have a mentor in the organization, my boss, who had great experience, who helped me learn sort of on the job. But the fact was that we didn't have that. There was almost no situations that I was in, and especially when I was building the teams, or do we have these what I'd call the flashy superstar salespeople? No, if you got the structure in place, and you have people who they have to be very competent. Don't confuse it. But you don't have to go out and hire these mercenaries to come in and think they're going to be the salvation. It's really your success is really the end product of the contribution of everybody.
Absolutely. I say when I'm doing work with clients, which I do every day, war room work on big deals, is the team gets it right. The account team, at the end of the day, the account team gets it right, especially if you've got that strong account quarterback. It's backed up by the leadership, the sales leadership in the company, whatever that looks like for the company. It could be a sales manager, VP of sales, whatever it looks like. Those, if you've got those people and the account team, and there's an environment where the account team can disagree, they can debate, they can plan, and they're committed and they're accountable to seeing it through, they will get it right. And that's what I tell my clients. It's you don't need that superstar person, that single superstar. The account team can get it done, and by the account team systematically going through all the advances, and by systematically, really planning for their success. Every single time they meet and do that kind of work, they're just increasing their chances of success, period.
Yeah.
They get together and they do relationship mapping, and they talk about, who are the people we know, who are the people we don't know, but we know we need to know. What do we know about them? Who's going to be responsible for cultivating that relationship? Who's going to be the backup? Whatever that discussion is, you have those kinds of discussions, and that's just one example. You're improving your chances of success,
right? Because
you're not going to miss somebody, or you're not going to not cultivate the right people. And then you move to actually building the strategy. So having a strategy makes you more successful than not having a strategy.
Funny how that works.
Funny how that works. But, teams really, the teams that I work with, they kind of appreciate that, because sometimes the path between, wow, like Christy, I think I've got a big one, to getting a contract, a $20 million contract, a $30 million, a $40 million. 40 is my biggest, and I did that with a client last year. It was super fun. But that path is not clear to people. They don't. It's like a vortex. They don't really know.
Yeah.
And so just by showing them that path and going, this is the path, and these things are all going to contribute to that success. They're like, we can do that. We can do that.
Yeah. Well, I agree. And I one of the sort of last points I wanted to make, because it was sort of notable to me in the book is you didn't refer much to sort of C-level involvement, maybe VP of sales, but CEO and so on. And I would make the observation that for startups, for small to mid-sized companies, if you're going to implement, a large account, big deal selling program, is really needed. The CEO needs to be involved. And in the cases where they've been more intimately involved, things work much better, because especially when you have these cross-functional teams, it's very common, especially in newer companies and so on, where political turfs get staked out, and bringing people together sometimes can be more difficult even than bigger companies. And so CEO involvement, really important. I'll tell a story about that. As one company I was working with, that we're selling big deals, and we had a large account management component to it, as even in the pre-sale, and because we were doing big pilots oftentimes. And in that company, every Monday, the CEO ran the sales meeting, basically.
Oh,
and
nice.
Every VP in the company was in it. And if you were an account manager, we call it an account manager, if you were running your account quarterback, if you were that person and the VPs their department wasn't living up to their commitments, you brought it up in the meeting. You were expected to bring it up. You had hell to pay if you didn't bring it up. And then the CEO corrected the problem on the spot with VPs.
On the spot. What great transparency and problem solving.
Right. But there was that commitment that you need to have to big accounts where it goes right to the top and people say, okay.
Yes.
We're not going to let any roadblocks, any politics, any whatever personalities interfere with getting the job done.
I agree. Well, in the kind of the culture part of the book, I do have a couple of plays that are specific to engaging executives, and one of the most popular tools is kind of the executive communication brief. There's a sample of that in that play, but it's about connecting your company's executives with your prospects' executive teams, and really what it takes to have those meetings and those relationships, what it takes for them to be successful, how the account team has to participate to set that up for success. And then I mentioned the communication brief. There's an example of that. That's kind of the, capitalizing on those interactions and actually, putting that in writing, and that becomes kind of a really good sales tool that can do a lot of things. And I actually work on those a lot with my clients, like on an annual basis, that kind of thing. Actually, executive engagement is a topic to my other book, The Top Seller Advantage. And how to engage executives over time, not just get to them. But you're right, it's critical, and it really, that's why I put those pieces in the culture part of the Sales Leader Playbook, because that's where, if you don't have that in place, you aren't going to have a big deal culture. If the executives aren't engaged, maybe not like running the weekly sales meeting. I love that, but they're not all willing to do that.
we call it the weekly account management meeting, but that's basically a sales meeting.
But
well, I think and I think the other thing too is, and this is again to this point, because I hear what teams are doing. We got our play. Our play at this point is, our executive CEO is going to call their CEO, blah, 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 blah. I'll just reiterate, it's so important for that C-level person to be so intimately involved with the deal that they don't need to be they don't need to be briefed. And I think in small and mid-sized companies, startups for sure, that's the level of attentiveness the CEO needs to have to what's going on. Is they really don't need to be briefed. They know what's going on. They know what needs to be said.
Well,
bigger companies, obviously, they're further away from it. You got more layers, but we have a large audience of startup sellers that listen to this. And, if your CEO's not involved in it, make sure they get involved.
But so a side note to that, a little contrarian note, is you do have the situations where the CEO goes a little rogue. I believe they always need to be briefed. I believe there always needs to be that pre-call plan. And Steve Hall, who's my subject matter expert he makes this point. We actually, in his expert piece, we talk about, the CEO that goes rogue, starts promising things that are completely inconsistent with the strategy or the account team, or talking about things that the other executive, that pre-call planning, I'm just a huge.
You do that.
Yeah, I think. But I understand your point. You're saying that they know they're not starting from scratch.
Yeah, and I think that there's this. I think there's a little mythology built around that. At least my experience, because again, been in this for 40 years and I've worked with tons of CEOs. Again, mostly in startups and small companies.
Most aren't going to go rogue.
No,
some do.
They want to get the deal, right? They're not there to show off. They're there to win the business. So what do I need to do to build a relationship with this person? What do I need to communicate? And you're going to do your pre-call planning. You always do your pre-call planning, but yeah, I've never had an instance where I had a CEO I couldn't trust. Sometimes I've had VPs of sales I couldn't trust.
I have seen a CEO go rogue, just for the record.
Well, I'm sure that they are, but I mean, maybe I've just been fortunate. But I said I'm oftentimes more concerned about the VP of sales who's feeling this urgency to get the deal and make the number, as opposed to
they can go rogue too.
Oh yeah, as opposed to the CEO that's like, yeah, I'm more mindful of the commitments we're making here. So I'll be careful.
They're looking at the bottom line. Yeah.
So.
No, it's all good.
All right. Well, Lisa, we've come to the end here. So tell people how they can find out more about your book and get in contact with you.
Yeah, the best thing is my website, which is www.toplinesales.com. I did another refresh. I think it's my fifth one over the years I've been in business.
It won't be the last.
No, it won't. But did one for this new book, and so you can click through to Amazon. There's a chapter download for people that buy the new book, which is the Top Sales Leader Playbook, and save their Amazon receipt number. They can get an exclusive bonus, which is a full organizational assessment, which I use all the time with clients. Clients love it. And they can get a downloadable version of that for free if they enter their receipt number. So there's a lot of resources. I'm one of the sales experts on the Bright Talk channel. And so they can click through to a couple of those. I'm committed to 12 webinars this year on that channel.
All right, there you go. So
yes, and of course, all the topics are from my most current two books.
as they should be. There's nothing wrong.
As they should be.
Nothing wrong with trying to sell your books.
Right. Well, they're on Bright Talk. You're not doing a lot of selling, but you're talking a lot about content. So that's an educational resource for people.
Oh, I know, but people aren't fools. They know.
Yes. No, there is the slide about the book.
Yeah, that's right.
No doubt. But my website really has everything. The other thing is there's a pre-call planning guide. It's a 2-page fillable PDF. Again, super popular. I use it constant with my clients. They can get that for free on my website too. That's on the bottom of the homepage.
Okay. Well, perfect. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Andy.
We'll look forward to doing this again. I still have a lot of leftover questions we could have talked about. So,
excellent. I want to hear more of your stories.
Yeah, don't get me started. So, all right, Lisa, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you again shortly.
Okay, friends, that was Accelerate for the week. First of all, as always, I want to thank you for joining me. And I want to thank my guest, Lisa Magnuson. Join me again next week as my guest will be Adam Hempenstall. He's the CEO of Better Proposals. And Adam and I are going to talk about the role that proposals play in today's sales environment. And he's going to share some fascinating data-driven insights about how your proposal should be structured, the particular information they should contain, how long they should be, and what they should look like, all in order to convert better. So you'll definitely want to check this out. Be sure to join Adam and me next week for this conversation. So again, thanks for joining me this week on Accelerate. And until next week, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.
RingDNA is the leading sales enablement platform that uses AI to help scale business growth. Trusted by the top companies across the globe, RingDNA offers a suite of powerful tools for every sales role. The RingDNA Dialer radically improves sales productivity and call connection rates, while guided selling helps reps know exactly what to do and when to do it. Conversation AI uses artificial intelligence to surface the most impactful coaching opportunities in real time. So, no matter where your team is working from, the RingDNA platform can help them exponentially increase call connections, opportunities, and revenue. Learn more at ringdna.com/platform. That's ringdna.com/platform.